What's going on, everybody? It's Joey from the DFS Dose, and I'm bringing you my first video in my series of how I am going to become a millionaire. Yes, you heard that right. I'm going to win the Fantasy Football Millionaire Maker on Draftkings in the 2019 NFL season. All right, so let's get right into it. So if you don't already know, the Millionaire Maker is one of DraftKings' top contests on their site. It is a $20 buy-in, 294,000 entries, $5 million in prizes. So, with that being said, the first place prize is $1 million. That's a lot of money, but that is what we are going to be shooting for in this video. So with this series, I'm going to go over on my process of making a Millie Maker lineup and how I am going to look at it for the 2019 season. So before we get into the players, we're going to look at some Millie Maker winners' stats and how they constructed their lineups. So this article by Adam Levitan of DraftKings came out on July 13th. So a little over a month ago, and he did an analysis on the Millie Maker winners over the last 45 winners. So he goes over avoid popular plays. No, so we need to have somebody that is more than 20% owned. We definitely need to have somebody that is very, very low owned. So 43 out of 45 or 95% roster at least one player less than 5% owned. That's a pretty high number. So next, salary cap. That's a given. You should be using most of your salary cap every week, even if you're playing in different styles of contests. What position should I use in my flex? Out of the 45 winners, 25 used a running back, so that's more than 50% of the last 45 winners. One with a running back in the flex, 18 used a wide receiver. So that means we are going to be targeting running backs and wide receivers in our flexes for the Millie Maker. We need to have ownership under 15%. 37 of the last 45 winners had under 15%. So that's what we need to be shooting for. And the Millie Maker is a multi-mass entry GPP, so you can put 150 entries in, but only 8 people out of the 45 winners put 150 entries in, and one put 145 in. So 9 people put over 145 entries in out of the last 45 winners. In fact, 19 of 45 winners had 5 or fewer entries. So that means you don't need to spend a lot of money to become a millionaire. You could buy in with 1 or 2 or 3 entries and potentially win. So, with that being said, let's get right into some lineup construction. And obviously, I can't give off full lineups because that's against DraftKings terms of service, but I'm going to be doing my best to give some plays that I'm on and maybe take a look at some low-owned guys. So first, we're going to start with quarterbacks. Obviously, we got the top guy as Patrick Mahomes. He's 7,200 on the road in Jacksonville. Not sure if I like that spot or not. It's definitely a tough spot. Expected the Jaguars to rebound this year. Their defense should be better than last, and their offense should be better as well. Andrew Luck obviously retired. Then we got Jameis Winston in a shootout at home against the Bucks with Bruce Arians as his head coach. No running backs in Tampa Bay, so they're destined to throw the ball a lot. If I had to pay up for a quarterback, I would pay up for Jameis Winston. He is probably my top option over 6,000. But personally, I like to pay down at quarterback. I think there is much better positions to pay up for, such as running back. So with quarterbacks, I like to pay down and hopefully hit some value plays in the quarterback. With that being said, we're going to look at some guys under 6K. There's one guy on this list that I'm going to, and no, it is not Kyler Murray. I am not on the Kyler Murray hype train. I'm looking at Nick Foles, 5,300 at home against the Chiefs. The Chiefs really made no major upgrades on their defense. Yes, they did sign Tyrann Mathieu, but they lost Eric Berry in the process. They traded D Ford basically for Frank Clark, so that doesn't impact the D line. They really made no upgrades in the defense in general. I expect Nick Foles to want to have a hot start as the new starter in Jacksonville, and I think he does that at home against the Chiefs in a very favorable matchup, and he is a solid GPP option as I feel like people will not be on him. All right, we can move on to running backs. There is a lot of running backs that you could potentially play to win you $1 million. Zeke should be back. Reportedly, a deal should be done by the end of this video. Reportedly, a deal should be made by the end of this week. Should be a done deal when this video releases. So I don't hate that play at 9,200. But my preferred top option would definitely be Saquon, 9,000, in the same game. He's just the Giants' whole offense. The Giants are missing Sterling Shepard. They're missing Golden Tate for week 1. They're still rolling out Eli Manning, who is absolutely terrible. I have no clue why he's a starter. But, we got to go with what they give us. And we know that Saquon is going to get a bunch of touches. He's going to run the ball a lot. He is going to catch the ball a lot. At 9,000, he is a solid GPP option. Just to talk about some other guys real quick, we got Christian McCaffrey at 8,800 going up against the Rams at home. I think he will not be owned, and I think he is still a great player, and he will get a bunch of touches week 1. And that should be a very high-scoring game. That is definitely a stackable game, and 8,800 is a fair price for Christian McCaffrey after the year that he had last year. He finished as the RB2 behind Saquon, only by about 0.20 points. So they weren't that much separated, and 8,800 is a good price for McCaffrey, but I'd rather play Saquon for 9,000. We got a lot of great players that are very, very cheap. We have Leonard Fournette at 6,100 going up against the Chiefs. I already ranted about how bad the Chiefs' defense is, and they did not improve their run defense either. Leonard Fournette would be a good piece to play week 1 there. He is the workhorse running back in Jacksonville. He lost weight. He's been looking good in camp. He's been looking good in the preseason games. They want to get him more passing touches, which matters a lot on DraftKings full PPR, unlike FanDuel. I love a Jacksonville stack this week. I will say that. I love a Jacksonville stack for this Millie Maker. I don't think people will be on them. There's more appetizing matchups out there. I love a Jacksonville stack. But there are so many running backs that can have absolutely monster weeks. We have Dalvin Cook, 6,000 at home. Home running backs are very, very good. He's going up against the worst Dalvin Cook is going up against the worst fantasy defense last year in Atlanta. Granted, they are getting players back from injury, such as Deion Jones, Keanu Neal. They are coming back from injury. So that is something to be aware of, but they were still very, very bad, and Dalvin Cook has looked very good in the preseason. He broke off an 85-yard touchdown run, or around there, in the last preseason game. For 6,000, he is very cheap, and I love Dalvin Cook. Kerryon Johnson, he's going to be the workhorse in Detroit. They are on the road in Arizona, but the Lions want to run the ball, and he is the guy. 5,800, I love Kerryon Johnson this week as well. There's just so much value in this range. just in this range right here. So much value. It's honestly nuts. Like, it's gonna be hard, but like I said, I think we gotta keep in mind the ownership if you want to win the Millionaire Maker. We could play a chalk guy, but we have to keep our ownership low. I love Chris Carson week 1 at home against Cincinnati. Seattle really doesn't have any receivers right now. They have Tyler Lockett as their only healthy wide receiver. The Seahawks are going to run the ball a ton. Rashad Penny has not looked good. People were on the Penny hype train. I was not a part of that hype train. I've been a Chris Carson fan since he emerged 2 years ago. He is the workhorse running back in Seattle, and he will get the workload. Do not be scared to play him at 5,700. But either way, we're moving on to a wide receiver. So, as you can see, we have a lot of injuries at wide receiver. All these top guys have questionables, doubtfuls. AJ Green is not playing, so we're just going to disregard him. But Odell, Julio, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, Thielen are all questionable, but they all figure to play week 1. So for a top option, I do like Odell. He is coming to Cleveland. It will be his first regular season game in a Cleveland Browns uniform, and I expect him and Baker to have a great connection for the entire season. I think Odell is a player to own in Cleveland, and I think he will have a monster week 1. And 8,100 is relatively cheap for a player of his caliber, but I'm not sure if I want to lock him in or not. So we're just going to keep on looking. Julio, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, they all have very Millie Maker winning potential. You know, it's Julio, it's Mike Evans, it's Tyreek Hill. They're top wide receivers in the NFL. But we have Julio on the road in Minnesota. Minnesota has a great secondary, a great defense. That'll be a tough matchup for him. But Julio Jones is matchup proof. Just for upside purposes, Julio does have upside, but not as much as Odell. Mike Evans and Jameis Winston have a solid connection in Tampa Bay. They figure to throw the ball more with Bruce Arians at the helm. Coaching, the Tampa Bay offense should be really good, and they do have a nice, tasty matchup against the Niners' trash secondary. So I do not hate Mike Evans at 7,900, but again, I think there is a clear talent difference between Odell and Mike Evans, and Odell is only 200 more. Tyreek Hill is always a candidate to pop off and win you a bunch of money in any given week in DFS. But on the road in Jacksonville, going up against Ramsey and AJ Boye and the Jacksonville defense as a whole, that is a fade in my opinion. I definitely like some of these guys. AJ Green, like I said, he's not playing. T.Y. Hilton, no. Diggs and Thielen. I like these options. Like I said, Falcons defense, worst in the league last year for fantasy. They were just absolutely terrible. I don't think there is anybody on the Falcons that can cover Adam Thielen or Diggs for that matter. I think Thielen is a better receiver, and I think him and Kirk Cousins have more of a connection. So I'm more inclined to play Thielen, and I think he would be one of my top options for week 1 if I'm not playing Odell. I'm just not plugging him in. I can't give a full lineup. Remember that. But there's more plays that I am emphatically more enthused about than others. So we got Chris Godwin. He will be very, 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 very chalk. You take that as you will. That means, boop, put him in. Okay. Tyler Lockett will be owned. He is the only receiver in Seattle. That means when they do throw the ball, he will get all of the targets. Play Tyler Lockett in your lineups. He will win you money. And he scores a lot of touchdowns. But we need some value guys that will be very low owned. So I'm going to go over that guy, and he is D.D. Westbrook, 4,800. Like I said, I love the Jacksonville stack for week 1. I don't know why, I just have a feeling. I'm not trying to convince anybody to play them. I will probably get them at low ownership if I play them. And just for full transparency, I'm going to be playing 2 lineups in the Millionaire Maker a week. So $40 a week. I'm not going to be playing any more or any less. I will be making 2 separate lineups of all the plays that I talked about in this video. But D.D. Westbrook, he's the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. Him and Nick Foles have a solid connection from the preseason and training camp. I think he will be Nick Foles' go-to target, and stacking gives you your best chance at winning tournaments and winning in general in DFS. And we have a nice Nick Foles, Leonard Fournette, D.D. Westbrook stack. And if you're a fan of running it back with somebody else, you can run it back with Tyreek Hill or Damian Williams if you're into that kind of stuff. Personally, I'm not, but to each his own. So just look at some other cheap options that potentially could be in play. DJ Moore, 5,500, is the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. I expect him to have a nice leap year from his rookie year. He's definitely a option at 5,500. And that about sums it up for wide receiver. There's some 4K options that you could go to, like Marquise Goodwin is a starting wide receiver in San Francisco, so you could take a shot on him. Paul Richardson is the wide receiver 1 in Washington, but beware, Case Keenum is their starting quarterback, and he is absolutely trash. Trey Quinn, starting slot wide receiver in Washington. Terry McLaurin should start opposite Paul Richardson. Rashard Higgins, 3,200, is a wide receiver 3 in Cleveland. Him and Baker do have a connection from their preseason last year when they were on the second string. And, yeah. So we're just going to move on to tight end real quick. Tight end, if you're not paying up for Kelsey or Kittle, which I do like both of them, especially Kittle, I think Kittle is probably the best play out of these 3. Zach Ertz has a tough matchup with Washington. Kelsey has a tough matchup with Jacksonville. Kittle has a very soft matchup against the Bucks in a warm weather game, in a pass-heavy game script, just from what we know and what we can use to our advantage. George Kittle out of these 3 if I were picking those 3. But personally, the guy that I will most likely be playing in every lineup is Hunter Henry. He is just too cheap. He's coming off an ACL tear, but he did play in the playoffs last year against the Patriots. But I love Hunter Henry, 3,900, at home against the Colts. I love him. I think he is the GPP option. I think he will also be very high owned, so he could be one of your players over 20%. But if you're not a fan of Hunter Henry, I love Evan Ingram week 1. Like I talked about earlier with Saquon, the Giants have nobody right now, and he is the safety blanket for Eli. So Evan Ingram is very, very cheap too, 4,800. Very easy to fit him in. But I'm just going to lock in Hunter Henry for right now. I love Delaney Walker, 3,500. He's coming back. Him and Mariota do have a connection. He only played this one game last year, but he did have 7 targets in that one game before he got hurt for the season. I love Delaney Walker at 3,500. So we're going to talk about some defenses to end this video off of my potential Millie Maker winning lineup. And there's one defense that I really, really love for week 1, and that's the Lions. Yes, they are a road defense, but they are going up against the Cardinals, who have probably the worst O-line in the entire league, and the Lions have one of the best defensive lines in the league. They added Trey Flowers. They have Snacks Harrison still. They have a couple other guys that should get after Kyler Murray. And I love the play because Kyler Murray is going to be very owned week 1. People expect him to put up a lot of pass attempts, a lot of rush attempts in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, which is basically a spread offense on steroids. And I love that play. It is an all-around good situation for a good defense to face a offense that is potentially going to be trying to put up a lot of plays in one game. So I love the Lions week 1. That's my top defense. But just to talk about some others, you can't go wrong with the Ravens. They're the top one if you want to pay up. Personally, I like to pay down at defense. But just going over this, I think the Lions stand out. I think they have a lot of upside. I think it's a sneaky play. I think they will be low owned. Don't want to play any of these defenses. They all suck. That's pretty much it. These mid-tier defenses are pretty decent. The Eagles' defense, if I want to pay up, will probably be the top option, as Washington has nobody. They're starting Case Keenum, who is legit shit. They have no wide receivers, like I talked about in the wide receiver section, and they could be a GPP winning defense. Honestly, I'm a big fan of supporting hashtag no defense. But, we got to work with what's provided to us. That about sums this video up. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeyCarrion_. Same thing as the YouTube. You can follow me on every other social media at JoeyCarrion. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will be making a new video every week detailing my process on making lineups and analyzing what is given to us and how I am potentially going to become a millionaire. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a blessed day.